Great. We are now going to be looking at um, another element of the biblical framework for a healthy church. And if you recall, we began by looking at the word church or ecclesia, and then we moved from there and we looked at the metaphors, and then from the metaphors, we looked at the church as mission, and from the church's mission, when it get off mission, we want it to stay pure, and therefore we do church discipline. And then from church discipline, we looked at the ordinances, and then the last time we looked at the issue of leadership in both elders and deacons. And now what we want to look at is when the church is on mission, one of the things it needs to be doing in Jesus' last words to his disciples was make disciples. And so it seems really obvious that when you look at the life of Christ, that when he came, he spent about a year and a half spending time with a select group of men and letting them just see his life, letting them see what he's about. And then he calls them and he says, I want you to follow me. And he is calling them as disciples. But the word discipleship, as we said earlier, simply means a learner. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to look at this idea of discipleship. And as intuitive as it may seem to be looking at the life of Christ, that he had 12 disciples and that he invested very heavily into these disciples, somehow many churches seem to miss this key element of discipleship. And so as you're building your framework, you're going to want to make sure that this idea is very clearly represented. And so in Matthew 28:18-20, it says, remember we said, all authority has been given to me. And based on that authority, it says, then you go therefore, based on this authority, therefore, for all that I've written in the book of Matthew, therefore, make disciples. Okay, make learners of Christ. And how are you going to do that? In your going, we said, as you go about life, in your baptizing, as you bring people to faith, and in your teaching them to obey, as you build them up in their faith as Christians. And so discipleship has to involve those three elements. It starts before a person comes to Christ. It involves bringing the person to Christ, and then it involves what do you do after they come to Christ. And so there needs to be an intentional development and movement of the lost to being saved, and then the saved being built up. And then just as Jesus sent out his disciples, who then sent out their disciples until we get to us, it needs to be tied into some goal way out here that we're asking those that we lead to Christ and that we build up in their faith, can you do the same in the others? In crew language, we say you need to win them to Christ, then you need to build them up in their faith. You may need to bring training into their lives, and then you send them out to do the same. That is the process of discipleship. And if you think about why we are here to represent God and his interest, to make the invisible God visible, to demonstrate to the world who God is and how he views life in this world. And then we live that life out before others so that they can see God in us and be attracted to him. Discipleship is the process of forming Christ in us. It's a work of the Holy Spirit, but it's the Holy Spirit using people like you and I who are committed to helping men and women become learners of Christ, or children to become learners of Christ. And so it's not rocket science. It's not super complicated, but Satan has done just a profoundly good job of causing churches to lose sight of the simple fact that our mission is to make disciples. Take the lost, bring them to faith, build them up in their faith, and send them out to do the same. That's exactly what Jesus did. He incarnated himself so that he could live out a life as a human. He lived and embedded himself in the lives of these 12 men. Even though Judas betrayed him, the other 11 remained faithful. And because of their faithfulness and their willingness to go out and do the same, we're here today. So as you're thinking through a biblical framework for your healthy church, discipleship needs to be a key element within your framework. And again, I'll let you look at the scriptures and flesh that out more, but that'll get us started. So we have one more to look at, and we'll do that in our next video. Thanks.